Like in basketball, the officials got to hand you the ball about.
That's how it goes.
Got to touch it, and that's it. So the 49ers advance. They will go on to play the Green Bay Packers up at Lambeau next week. As for Dallas, they were the 3 seed in the NFC. Their season is over. Another year where postseason disappointment takes root in the state of Texas with Big D. All right, with Jonathan Jones, let's bring in Ryan Wilson. I'm going to start with you, JJ, and I'm going to give you both teams. We'll first do how it was won, then we'll do how it was lost. Let's start with the 49ers. So many different things to choose from. Where was this game won by San Francisco?
They were the more physical team. I don't think there was any question about it. When you look at how they were able to run the ball with Elijah Mitchell, certainly how they were able to run the ball with Deebo Samuel, the guy who does not go down at first contact. That's how you win these playoff football games. You have to win it with your defense. You have to win it with your run game. You've heard it once. You've heard it 1,000 times. And that's what we saw tonight with the San Francisco 49ers. Obviously, they brought their defense out here. Okay, showed a couple of issues there late in the game, but they were able to dominate the line of scrimmage early on, build that lead, and then hold on to it when they needed to there at the end.
Yeah, for me, JJ, Deebo Samuel is the MVP, and, we talked about him before the game, how important he was. You talk about the physicality. Dak Prescott was pressured on 13 dropbacks. He was sacked 5 times, and they did most of that damage without Nick Bosa. They lost Fred Warner late in the second half, and they were still getting after it. That offensive line for Dallas had no answers to any of the questions that were being provided there by DeMeco Ryans' defense. And look, a credit to Kyle Shanahan for eking this thing out. I have some concerns about Jimmy Garoppolo, that pass he threw that turned that game around. It was 23-7 at one point with about 5 minutes to go in the third quarter. And the next thing you know, they scored 10 points in a hurry. The Cowboys didn't get back in it. But the resiliency, the way that team played is exactly what Jerry Jones was hoping to see from his football team at home. And they didn't show up. They didn't show up at the beginning. They got lucky with the interception. And then that last play is one of the worst play calls I can remember in such a critical situation when you have 0 timeouts.
Yeah, let's get to that. And now we'll go to Dallas. Look, they had 14 penalties. They did not have a good first half. Where was this game lost? Does it come down to simply that final drive and that final play call where they're moving the ball up the field, and if Dak goes down a half a second earlier, they're going to get a shot at the end zone? Ryan, where was this game lost for Dallas?
I think it was in that last drive, EK, because the 49ers kept giving them chances down the stretch. We know in that final drive for the 49ers, Jimmy G actually converted that 4th down. Trent Williams was not set, so they got the ball back, punted the ball into the end zone. So Dallas got the ball at the 20, no timeouts left, moved the ball down the field quite easily, had opportunities, threw the ball out wide, got out of bounds on each of those 3 subsequent plays to that final play. And for some reason, Kellen Moore and or Mike McCarthy decided to call a QB draw with 14 seconds to go. That's all on the Cowboys. You can talk about all the penalties that led up to that, the Randy Gregory 3 penalties, the penalties on the subsequent drive that kept that 49ers drive alive. I think it came down to that last drive, a 6-point game. You had an opportunity to win at home, and that's what you came out with. That was your best play, and they got exactly what they deserved in the end.
All right, look, we're going to do this all night long. This was a wild game with a crazy fourth quarter with about 10 different things that could have gone either way. So here's your updated NFC playoff bracket. We sort of didn't know with all these games that have happened so far where they're going next because it's all contingent upon the other games. This one's locked in. 49ers up at Lambeau, saying hello to Aaron Rodgers. There is some history between these two franchises in the playoffs. They're going to get it on again next week in Green Bay. All right, the man on the call for us here at CBS, of course, the great Tony Romo. Tony, that was a wild fourth quarter, 15 different things that could have gone either way here or there. Ultimately, in your mind, what was the difference in the game here?
I think it's really easy. I mean, it's penalties, and it was self-inflicted. It wasn't energy. It wasn't for, playing so hard through the whistle or anything like that. It was a lack of a mental approach almost on that. It was just like careless. So many penalties before the snap, you can't have pre-snap penalties, and you can't have that many and expect to beat good teams. And the Cowboys really hurt themselves today. And they had every opportunity, to keep getting back in this and that just take a step forward and come back 2 steps. And that's what ended up hurting them today.
Yeah, 14 penalties for Dallas. And let me follow up on that. Look, you know this franchise, you know the fan base, you know the ownership group, and it's another postseason that doesn't quite go their way, and it seems it's always for a different reason. What's missing in Dallas?
Well, I think it's really, this was one of their best chance because they had a defense. And, it's not every year that you're actually like in the top 5 on both sides, top 10 on both sides. They were. And to lead the league in like turnovers and to be like first or second and third down percentage, it's like you got to go back a long time, for the Cowboys to have. This was like a 90s type of defense statistically in a lot of ways. And people forget when they were at their best, both these franchises, they had a dominant defense as well. And that's why I thought they had a great opportunity to make a run in the playoffs this year, but they didn't get it done. And it comes down to just a play here, a play there, a referee that doesn't get the ball down. That's what these games come down to, these key crucial plays.
Ultimately, where did San Francisco do enough today? They were pretty good rushing the passer. Deebo Samuel was pretty good. Jimmy G was good at times, but when you look and say, hey, this thin, razor-thin margin, ultimately, what was the difference on their side of the ledger?
It's always going to be tough to go on the road in the playoffs against the higher seed, so they've obviously accomplished a lot, both these teams. But the team who's at home, they have an advantage playing at home, and they've shown that they're capable and a good football team. So, you're going to be, when you're on the road, it's not like you're going to come in and blow anybody out in the playoffs. That's very rare. So, it's going to be a tight, contested game. It's the start that really changed it, though. Their ability to come out and execute on that first drive and get that touchdown, I think that was a major difference because as it mounts, the pressure, it just keeps building. And when things aren't going your way, and the Cowboys never really got to just step on the gas like they normally do and go get 2 or 3 scores quickly. It took a turnover at the end to even make this a game. Otherwise, they're down 2 scores going into that. Offensively, they had that short field. Otherwise, it was just one of those games that the Cowboys had 2 or 3 times this year, and it just turned out that way in the playoffs where they didn't look their best.
Well, thank you very much for a few minutes after the game. Great job. Thank you for that explanation at the end where you're like, listen, you can't set it up yourself. The official has to set it up for you, which made us understand exactly why the clock got to 0. Thanks, Tony.
You got it. Thanks.
All right, Tony Romo said the difference in this game was penalties, and Dallas certainly had a lot of them. You're talking about most penalties in a playoff game. There you go. Since 1940, that's been a minute. No one's ever had more in a playoff game. People have had as many, but no one's had more than Dallas had today. And it seemed like there was a bunch of them in the fourth quarter. And I got to tell you, I can't remember one where I went, oh, that's a bad call. It kind of earned all 14 of those. All right, let's get our guys in, Ryan Wilson and Jonathan Jones. I'm Eric Casillas. I'm going to start right out of the gate, JJ, with you. Did you have a problem with the last play call of the game by Dallas? If Dak starts his slide 3 feet earlier, they're going to have a second, and they're going to have a really good opportunity to win this game. It's kind of one of those like it, love it, hate it on that last play call.
Hate it. Absolutely hate it. I don't hate it. It's not, oh, you're saying that you hate it now because you know what the result ultimately was. No, I hated it then. And they were at the 41-yard line. Dak Prescott has the arm to hit a Hail Mary with 14 seconds left from the 41-yard line. I'm not saying throw the Hail Mary. I'm saying do anything other than run a quarterback draw to the middle of the field where you are relying on so many external factors, right? You're relying on the internal factors of all 11 guys getting back and lined up in time. You're also relying on the external factors of the 49er who's going to tackle Dak Prescott, who doesn't stall and stay on him. Now you're relying on this ref, this umpire, running back and being able to
and you're not blaming the ref. The ref hustled and did his job. You cannot blame the ref if you're a Cowboy.
And he has to run through 300-pound men and get to the ball. It was not his fault. I'm not even sure it was the Cowboys' offensive line's fault. But that is the risk that you run when that happens, and it's too great a risk to run here in the playoffs.
If you're a golfer, there's an old phrase that's never up, never in, right? If you have a putt and you have to make it to continue the tournament, you never leave it short. Because if it's short, then no matter what you do, you can't win. If you don't at least take a shot into the end zone, you can't win this game. and you were close enough where you could have taken a shot, and instead you did this. This was a never up, never in finish for Dallas. But is it revisionist? Is it sort of just because it didn't work out that we're complaining here, Ryan? Do you want to make a case that if he slides 2 feet earlier, this is a brilliant call and they would have been on the 22-yard line with a chance to win? Or do you hate this play call too?
This is never up, never in, and you're putting with an 8-iron. I'm with JJ. This makes zero sense on every level. And I would ask Mike McCarthy or Kellen Moore or Jerry Jones or whoever came up with the play call if they think it's a good play call at the time and how they feel about it now. I guarantee if you poll every Cowboys fan leaving that stadium, they're probably extremely upset. JJ laid out the reasons why. Here's another reason. We've been spending this weekend lambasting the officials for missing obvious calls. The officiating crew in this game actually did a pretty good job, but now you're putting the game in their hands in the waning seconds. You're asking a middle-aged man to sprint 35 yards, set the ball up, and make sure everything's ready to go just so Dak can spike it with a half a second. I mean, that is an extremely fine line. If you're defusing a bomb, that's not the play you call right there. You call the play where you get out of bounds and give yourself a timeout. I just don't understand how this makes sense. The 3 previous plays were great play calls. That last play was a head scratcher.
Let me follow up on something you said. Everybody is, look, it's easy to beat up the refs in every game and every sport all the time. They called 14 penalties on the Cowboys. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying it's a thing. And you saw that last play. Give me a grade for the refs on the whole in this game, Ryan Wilson.
The ref in the last play, A+ for sprinting down the field. On the whole, I give them a B. They weren't involved in the game, and you noted, EK, the penalties we saw, there was not one we went, oh my gosh, that's the whistle blown early in the back of the end zone.
So then why are they only getting a B? What would they have to do to get an A? I mean, they called 14 penalties, they didn't miss any, and they sprinted in the last play. You're grading like a Latin teacher here. I'm not saying you got to grade like a gym teacher, but this can't be, Sanskrit. Is a B too low here, JJ?
Listen, this is something that the refs came into this game, and they do their homework. They know that they are about to get a Dallas Cowboys team that is the most undisciplined football team in the entire National Football League. That's not hyperbole. 127 penalties in 17 games this season led the NFL. They were 2 yards short of having the most penalty yardage in the NFL. The Raiders, and we know all the issues with the Raiders over this year and their discipline, they were number one. Only 2 yards away from being number one, the Dallas Cowboys. That is who they are. That is what they do. So they came into this game. I'm not at all surprised that they tied the record in the NFL. Not in the past couple years, not since they, expanded the playoffs, not since the merger, but since before World War II. Is how many
Pete Prescott was 11 at that time. I mean, that's how old it is.
Incredible.
What ultimately is missing in Dallas, and who gets the biggest slice of blame pie here, Ryan Wilson? This has not been 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. They've had good regular seasons, and they've come up short. They have not made a deep run to the playoffs in a long time. Dak has, one playoff win in his career. Mike McCarthy didn't get that. Last year was kind of a weird year. He lost his quarterback. But what's missing in Dallas, and who gets the biggest slice of blame pie?
It starts with Mike McCarthy. Jerry Jones brought him in 2 years ago to fix this thing. Mike McCarthy taking a year off after Aaron Rodgers basically ran him out of town in Green Bay. And look, it has not gone well. Now, we can also blame Kellen Moore, who's a hot head coaching candidate as we sit here. Dan Quinn comes out of this looking okay. His defense got some turnovers, but I think Mike McCarthy's the guy. And I'm not convinced that Mike McCarthy has changed as a head coach. He feels like the same guy he was in Green Bay at the end there when things weren't going well. He did a good job this year, for sure. The team won 12 football games. So if you're asking me, hey, who you want to take in a trivia contest about football, Mike McCarthy or Kyle Shanahan, that's a no-brainer. I'm taking Kyle Shanahan every day of the week. And Kyle Shanahan's a guy who struggled during the points of the season because of his quarterback play. So I do wonder what Jerry Jones is going to do here. I do wonder if we're going to see a return to the Wade Phillips versus Jason Garrett situation with this Kellen Moore / Dan Quinn situation in terms of them getting jobs and what that might mean for Mike McCarthy. But right now, I would imagine Mike McCarthy doesn't feel great driving home, wondering what his future holds in Dallas.
No, he can't possibly feel great. If there's a move that's going to be made in Dallas, it's going to be I believe it when I see it. But all that said, what does Dallas need to focus on in the offseason? I talked about it. It's the discipline. We saw it last year in the playoffs with the Kansas City Chiefs. They were one of the most undisciplined teams throughout the year, and it caught up with them in the Super Bowl. Nobody talked about it because it was the tackles and the pass rush on Patrick Mahomes. They also continued with their penalty issues. They have been a more disciplined team this year. With the Dallas Cowboys, a very undisciplined team, day in, day out, week in, week out of this NFL season. Not at all surprised that there was a Randy Gregory penalty there at the end that really should have ended the game. Of course, they got another opportunity there at the end with the slide and everything that we've talked about. But not at all surprised that this marred their playoff game. If it wasn't going to be this week, if they eked out a win, if they got a Hail Mary, it was going to get them next week. You don't figure those things out. The most undisciplined team in the NFL, I'd love to look this up. One of our great researchers can, but I am certain of this. In 56 years, the most undisciplined team in the NFL has never won the Super Bowl. It was not going to happen. I'm certain they've never even really gotten to the Super Bowl. So that's the issue that you had with the Dallas Cowboys.
The only exception might be the 70s Raiders were always the most penalized team, but it wasn't undisciplined penalties.
Right.
They used to take penalties like they would tell their offensive line, you hold every play and make them call it at least once. So they would almost sort of sign for that. And that's not the same as undisciplined. I get what you're saying.
Right.
The undisciplined teams definitely don't win. And I'm with you today. As much as we always give the quarterback it's too much credit, too much blame. Today, to me, Dallas was not well coached today because they were not disciplined today. 14 penalties, and I can't remember one that I was like, oh, that's chippy, or they were all legit. They earned them all.
Let's not forget the delay of game after the special teams played, the fake punt, and there was whatever the Cowboys were trying to do that wound up earning them a delay of game, a legitimate delay of game, when they had gotten the first down. It didn't make any sense at all. We're going to overlook that because of the quarterback draw with 14 seconds left and no timeouts, but that was a very smooth brain play.
There are 10 different plays that are always going to get overlooked in a game like this because it was so wild, and it was going to depend on who won or lost to Trent Williams, offsides, that kind of thing. All right, ultimately, Dallas, I think, is the bigger story, even though they didn't win. Usually we start with the winner, but Dallas, their season being over, how they lost, it is the Cowboys. I thought they were sort of your headline here. But the 49ers did win. We talk about teams that are in the way teams, right? Good enough to be in the playoffs, maybe good enough to win a game, but not good enough to win the Super Bowl. Are the San Francisco 49ers an in-the-way team, or are they a legitimate threat? JJ?
I mean, they played the Packers down to the last second, and that's who they're going to get next week. They played them down to the last second very early on in the year. But again, what do you need in the playoffs? You need a defense, and you obviously need a running game. We know that they have the running game. We know at this point that the 49ers are going to rush for 100 yards on you. That's a proven fact, and that will continue to be true for as long as they play in the postseason. What are they going to be on defense? We saw Fred Warner have what appeared to be a non-contact knee injury. It was later reported as an ankle injury. He appeared that he was ready to come back in the game. They kept him on the sideline. We're going to have to monitor that. Also, of course, Bosa left the game as well, being monitored for a head injury. And so their availability is going to factor in a great deal on how you're going to handicap this upcoming game against the Packers, no question about it. But they're going to run the football, and if they have one, or certainly if they have those two guys, you're going to like their defense as well.
I'm with JJ. This doesn't feel like an in-the-way team, and the biggest concern for me is Jimmy Garoppolo. Played well in the first half tonight, and then things got away from him. Played well in the second half last week in that Rams win and was impressive there. He's just got to put it together. But as we've been talking about here, you lean on the running game. Elijah Mitchell's been a fun find. Deebo Samuel might be the best player in football that doesn't play quarterback. He is so electric. And as JJ noted, you have to get those guys back, Fred Warner and Nick Bosa, on defense to give you a chance to get after Aaron Rodgers. Because if you can run the ball like the 49ers can, the Packers aren't going to be able to stop that. And if you can control the clock, keep Aaron Rodgers on the bench, and then get after him a little bit in the conditions that will likely be cold, you're going to have a chance. And as JJ noted, they played well in the first matchup. So this is not by any means an in-the-way team. Assuming, of course, Jimmy G doesn't go out there and just start winging the ball around, making a bunch of head-scratching mistakes like he did in that one play against Dallas and like he has done at some points during the regular season.
Hey, Jimmy G is the second-best quarterback by winning percentage in the history of the NFL on the road, and they are 34-15 with him under Kyle Shanahan, 8-28 without him. I get it. And today was sort of emblematic of his career. He got a win on the road in the playoffs against a good team, and we all go, yeah, but. He's a yeah, but guy. And I'm not saying it's fair or unfair. It just seems to be that's always the way it is. But this is a guy who's already been to a Super Bowl and had a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl. So we'll see if Jimmy G can go up to Lambeau and get a win. By the way, San Francisco going to Green Bay. They come in, a very hot team, 8-2 in their last 10. And, oh, by the way, courtesy of CBS Sports HQ and Joe Musso, Aaron Rodgers 0-3 against the 49ers in the playoffs. Going to look to break that string. And the 49er head coach, Kyle Shanahan, here he is after the win.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.